Welcome, everyone. I'm just going to kick this off and immediately hand it over to Joe. My name is Morgan Goodwin. I am the Angeles Chapter Director. I use he and him pronouns, and I'm calling in from the Garbellino, Tongva, and Tataviam lands of the San Fernando Valley. And my role here is really just helping make sure that the Airport Marina Group can have its meeting successfully with Zoom and all the technology. So let me hand it over to the chair, Joe Young, and take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We're back. Yes, we are back. We've been on pause for a while due to Sierra Club internal affairs. Now it's time to catch everyone up on key topics and ongoing work within our region, from issues such as oil and gas, protecting our freshwater natural resources under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, including the management requirements of groundwater dependent ecosystems. You all got that? Such as the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve. Learn about the latest environmental threats posed by the Department of Fish and Wildlife's wasteful dewatering and diversion plans in collaboration with their corporate partners of PLAYA VISTA, alongside the state's financial enabler, the California Coastal Conservancy. How does a plan to convert the Ballona wetlands into a fully titled Sightwater Bay affect a rare wildlife ecological reserve in our Santa Monica groundwater basin? That's a lot full there, and I think you'll there is much to learn about how the Ballona wetlands operates. Okay. Also point out to you that we are seated on the unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva indigenous people. So tonight we will start the meeting with a recording by Chief Anthony Morales of the Gabrielino Tongva and San Gabriel Mission Band of Indians in his recent address to the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board pertaining to their history and current events in PLAYA VISTA and the registered sacred sites, Ballona wetlands. And with that, Margot, I'll turn it over to you.
Here is Chief Morales.
Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to voice my opinion and the concerns of not only myself personally, but of my tribal council, the Gabrielino San Diego Band of Mission Indians. I want to start off with just a little bit of the background of our involvement way back in the early 2000s when the PLAYA VISTA development was taking place or was ready to be developed. And we've been involved there since there again, early 2000s. I want to start off with just a little bit of background information of the village that is there at PLAYA VISTA or Ballona Wetlands. It's the village of Winikapar, which means full of fresh water. It's a 9,000-year-old village, and it was during the times of the development. There was a burial ground that was desecrated. There was 1,000 human remains, and again, it was an atrocity for our people. It's something that it's a site that is registered, and again, we were involved with input and going to different meetings and city councils and what have you. But as you all know, the project took off and continued a mass destruction and just of a 9,000-year-old village and our ancestors. During those days, the Native American Heritage Commission sent various letters to the developers and to the city of Los Angeles, where it said that the Ballona Wetlands Ecological Reserve cannot be considered apart from the upstream Playa Vista development. And it went further to state that because of all the destruction, of all the desecration of our ancestors, that this is the greatest destruction of Native American burial sites and cultural resources in recent California history. So with that being said, here we are 20 years later, and again, we're addressing a project that they're describing as restoration. For us, I think it's just an alteration, because as I've been hearing, they're talking about drainage ditches and diversions of different water sources. And that's exactly what happened when the development was going on. They were talking about diverting water, a watershed or a stream bed, and they ignored our input. That we told them that it was a sacred site, there was cultural resources there, there was human remains there, and they went ahead and ignored us and still continued and did not divert the waterway that they were supposed to. And they went ahead and found the 1,000 human remains there. So with that being said, here we are again as a present-day descendant of the Ballona tribe. We are again facing a historical trauma. And by this I mean that it is emotional and psychological wounding extending over an individual lifespan and across generations caused by traumatic experiences. And this is exactly that for us and for my tribal members and for any Native American, that this trauma continues. And I feel that this project will continue that trauma. They're trying to disguise it as a restoration, as I said, but for us, it's nothing more than an alteration. I heard speakers before me saying about the sediment and so many cubic, whatever feet of sediment. But what they fail to say or address is that it is no matter how much sediment or whatever is there through the years, it's still a traditional cultural property. No matter what, it's still that. And a traditional cultural property encompasses a cultural landscape. So those elements are still there. And this is why we need to continue protecting those elements and their fresh water. I want to read just a quick paragraph or two that I submitted the other night to the water board. And I want to start off by saying that CDFW and the Coastal Conservancy are not listening to our indigenous concerns to protect and preserve the freshwater nature and ecosystems of the Ballona wetlands. Instead, they come to you with the restoration, which is an alteration for us, which they are asking to allow them to, in the form of trenches, ditches, whatever the definition you want to give it, of bringing fresh, sacred water out to sea. In doing so, CDFW and Coastal Conservancy also failed to consider our burial sites that are also bringing away, which will happen if this project goes on. And it's destructive, and it's going to allow salt water to infiltrate into a freshwater bay and contaminate it. The environment will be, of the freshwater of the wetlands will be contaminated. There will be a renewed upheaval of burial sites that have been acknowledged at Ballona but are not being protected and left in place. This disrespectful behavior needs to end. We want to see the goal of preserving protecting Ballona intact as a freshwater-driven ecosystem and to protect its native habitat and wildlife corridors. We want to see the promises that were given to us in the past that restoring Ballona is exactly what it'll do and that it will not convert it into a saltwater driven network. The state claims that it desires to protect rare wetland areas. Ballona is a rare freshwater driven coastal wetland. In Southern California, the state's conversion of its coastal wetlands to full title has kept any balance, causing Ballona to become a rare remaining coastal freshwater driven ecosystem. Although the agencies involved with Ballona claim to be mindful and respectful of our indigenous culture, but there has been no evidence of this. Now is your chance to show otherwise and help us to protect the sacred site that is Ballona wetland. I sent a list of questions to Mr. Brody by way of Patricia McPherson, who I've been networking with, and we also sent the very same questions to the Coastal Conservancy. I heard that they've been trying to contact me. I did receive a few emails. However, I felt that they were not answering my questions. So for me to continue networking with these agencies, or if they're ignoring my questions, would just be a lost cause. Because for them, and for any agency, recording that they had contact with the Native people is just a prerequisite for them. It just goes on their record that they did do outreach. And therefore, I felt that until my questions were answered, which they're not, I felt that there was no need personally to continue networking with them. So this is why I continued networking with the environmental groups that are out there at Ballona. And this
No, but Chairperson Morales, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that we do have an opportunity now to really have that dialogue between yourself and CDFW and the Coastal Conservancy. I mean, I think everybody is very interested in opening up that dialogue and having that discussion as well too.
Yeah.
And so I want you to stay on the line and hold your thoughts right there. But there's just a couple of clarifying questions that I have in my mind as well.
We can now go on from there because that tape of that hearing is also available that we can provide online or into the chat box also. But Anthony does not speak really more than that. And I think we can kick it back to you, Margot, and get into your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Chairwoman Camacho sort of cut off Chief Morales there and went to staff, and they didn't really answer any questions, and they went to CDFW, who had no answer. So his frustration with the water board is also Los Angeles Audubon's frustration with the water board, the Coastal Conservancy, the Coastal Commission even. And so I'm just going to present what LA Audubon's views are right now. We're focusing a lot on the water at the Ballona wetlands. So, because that is a main question. So let me just start my slideshow. Now, did I start screen sharing? Do I have to do that again? Yeah, okay. There. Can you see my slides?
We can. We see your screen. They look fantastic.
Okay, so let's, I'm gonna move Joe off my screen. There.
Ouch.
So sorry. So as Chief Morales said, their language calls Ballona, it is full of water, fresh water. And CDFW's plan right now is inconsistent with the surface and groundwater hydrology and the historical ecology of the Ballona wetlands. Now I can't even move my own slides there. I'm gonna have to do it this way. So just to reiterate, if we have anyone new, here is the Ballona wetlands, area A, across the Ballona flood control channel, area B, and C above area A. Playa Vista in this photo is being built here east of Lincoln and east of area B. You'll notice the salt pan prominently featured in area B towards the west, towards the ocean. So just in a nutshell, the Ballona Wetlands project presented by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, by the Coastal Conservancy, has been a top-down science type of project, very little involvement of the stakeholders and community at large. They had advisory panel meetings from 2005 to 2012, but really limited stakeholder involvement. It was just to tell us what was going on, some comments, but the comments were never addressed. So little community involvement, and really ignored tribal ideas for restoration. Chief Morales was allied to John Tommy Rosas and agrees with him on his thoughts of the restoration, and CDFW simply blew off John Tommy Rosas's plans or any input. So the plans remain the same as sort of the mid-2000s. That's a long time ago. Things have changed. And despite published scientific reports and community input to the contrary, this plan doesn't change. It doesn't take things into account that we know are true. Published information, the Ballona Creek watershed historical ecology shows that basically the Ballona wetlands were close to the ocean most years. We're not a tidal wetland, as CDFW wants to make them into a full tidal wetland. The publication classification of California estuaries on natural closure patterns of the Southern California coastal wetlands shows the same thing. So, and if you just go to the latest even definition of restoration, it seeks to initiate or accelerate ecosystem recovery following damage, degradation, or destruction. Okay, no one's arguing that the Ballona wetlands have been damaged and degraded, and they need some help, a lot of help, but they don't need to be made into something they never were. And that the goal of ecological restoration is really to return a degraded system to its historic trajectory. That trajectory does not include full tidal wetland. It's a basically freshwater, brackish water wetland, reliant on its surface water and groundwater. The CDFW plan from the EIR, which has now been decertified because of various groups' legal challenges. They have to redo their plans for their levees and for their mitigation planning. The plan as they have it, and they're not going to change that, they're just going to raise levees and make them bigger, is to allow the full tidal into the Ballona wetlands, which would eventually, with sea level rise, lose all the current salt pan habitat salt marsh vegetation and would in a few years give us mostly mudflat and open water. And by 2021, that's all it would be, with a very thin strip of pickleweed habitat that no respectable Belding savanna sparrow would nest in. So we're going to look at, where do they get this idea that open water and mudflat are so rare in Southern California? No, the actual science shows us differently. You see, in the last, historically, we've lost in Southern California 12% of salt marsh, that is pickleweed type habitat. We've lost 90% of the salt flat, seasonally flooded habitat. And we've lost 54% of freshwater brackish wetland. But we've gained 615% of open water mudflat. Now, why is that? Well, basically, they've made rare what really exists in Ballona, because mainly for mitigation projects. They have gone into degraded coastal wetlands, mainly close to the ocean, and they've opened them up because they needed mitigation for things like the San Onofre nuclear plant. They needed for the ports of LA and Long Beach. They needed that type of mitigation, open water mudflat. But what of our habitats? Here's a salt pan in Area B. This is where species that are migrating in spring and in fall take nourishment, take rest. And year-round, as it dries, it gives loafing birds a great opportunity to rest, and they have a good view if any predator is approaching. It's a very rare habitat, a salt pan, as I showed you in that table. But let's not just talk about it in the hypothetical of what would happen to Ballona if they open it up to full tidal. Let's look at Bolsa Chica. 16 years after they engineered open Bolsa Chica, which was again traditionally, historically closed to full tidal wet waters, they're now looking for a sustainable alternative because their plan didn't work. There's too much water. Target salt marsh pickleweed habitat is drowning. There's a lack of cordgrass establishment, which is a tidal marsh obligate species. And that's because there was never cordgrass at Bolsa Chica. Similarly, there's never been cordgrass recorded at Ballona wetlands because they're not tidal marshes. And, you know, the cost of continually dredging open Bolsa Chica is breaking the bank. And it's all made worse, of course, by sea level rise. So that's what's going to happen at Ballona. And what will we lose? We know we're going to lose rare and endangered species that currently live within the Ballona wetlands, that use the grassland, the pickleweed. They're not going to use a full tidal marsh. So what is all this talk about restoration when in fact they've never really looked? CDFW has never really discussed in a deep and meaningful way what the interaction of the surface and groundwater hydrology is and the historical ecology of the Ballona wetlands. But by law, they should have. By the state's Sustainability Groundwater Act of 2014, they should have done that type of analysis. So here, when we talk about Ballona being a mainly freshwater wetland, it's seasonally freshwater. Here we have dry in October last year, December, we're starting to see some water appear. This is in Area B Southeast. And by February, it's a lot of water. Now, this isn't, these are all pictures, by the way, thanks to Jonathan Coffin. This doesn't just happen in a heavy rainfall year like we had this past year. This is true every year. But what's happening to all the fresh water in the Ballona wetlands now? Because when we read the EIR, when we talk about the plan with CDFW, they say that Ballona is starved of its water. How can that be when I'm showing you all that water? Let's look at how much water is being allowed to drain from the Ballona wetlands. First, we'll start with the area of Playa Vista, which used to be connected, of course, to the ecological reserve before development. The development takes 53 to 67% of the surface water that once fell on the Playa Vista development area and ran to Ballona wetlands, ecological reserve. They take that water in their riparian corridor and into the detention basin, or as they call it, the freshwater marsh, and then out here to number 1, outfall into the Ballona Channel. That's a lot of water being drained before it even hits the wetland. But of just the rainfall that hits Ballona, they also drain that to the Ballona Channel through area 3 and 4. And even in area A, they're draining seasonal rainwater out into the Fiji Slough and into Marina del Rey. They're even draining some from the area C. We're not sure where that's going. What does it mean? Here is a site. This is the unpermitted drains. This is prior to their closure. Unpermitted drains were found by Jonathan Coffin in area B. Here, 2 drains on either side of Culver Boulevard in area B. This is what it looked like after, almost 20 years of draining. Grassroots Coalition prevailed in a suit with the Coastal Commission. Coastal Commission ordered the drains sealed and capped. You can see one of the drains here on the left. And this is what 3 years later, we see pickleweed develop where that water had been being drained. So they're obviously impacting native wetland habitat. It's important to note that pickleweed. That pickleweed was just there, but as you can see, it was mostly annual grasses. So with that water, combined with the salinity of the soil that's naturally there, we have a marsh habitat, pickleweed marsh habitat. And here we are water pooling again in that area in 2023. What about area A? Area A is where CDFW claims there's 3.2 million cubic yards of soil dump between area A and area C. And so they say it's impossible that there would be a wetland. But there was a wetland, there were frogs. Here we have a wetland delineation in the blue area. In 1986, this was made for the EPA by the Corps. And this is what we saw this year being drained out of area A. It's It's pretty stunning. Here you see a little channel even was slightly formed to continue to drain water from these areas. There's no permit for this. We bring this to the attention of the water board and there's no answer. We just have crickets. That's just area A. I mean, let's look further at rainwater that falls on area B. This year, we have ducklings out in area B. And this is what's draining from area B southeast. Under Culver Boulevard, all the fresh water that falls as rain. That's all pickleweed habitat it's traveling through. So when we look at that amount of water, we relate it to the Groundwater Sustainability Act. And a couple of years ago, we became aware of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency that is working in the Santa Monica subbasin. And following this and reading their plan, we we found they're making a lot of unsupported claims about the groundwater that will not be impacted by any pumping in the basin. They had no analysis of the current pumping up gradient at the PLAYA VISTA development, and we know they are pumping for cleanup and abatement as well as for the gas mitigation system that Shontel Johnson will be telling you about in a minute. They had no analysis of interconnection of surface and groundwater, certainly not in the Ballona wetlands. And they hid, identified gap in their analysis that prevented modeling of saltwater intrusion into the Bellflower Aquitard and the Ballona Silverado aquifers. And what's interesting about that is in the EIR by CDFW, they claim there wouldn't be any problem with saltwater intrusion by digging down the wetlands below current sea level. That doesn't make any sense since they don't have the data to say it, or it would be in the groundwater sustainability plan for the Santa Monica subbasin. We're not the only people, Los Angeles Audubon and Grassroots Coalition and BEEP, we're not the only people saying these things. The Nature Conservancy, Audubon California, Local Government Commission, and Union of Concerned Scientists sent an 11-page joint letter saying many of the same things and more about the lack of surface water, groundwater dependent ecosystems, and specifically the Ballona wetlands. So these are the things that led us to ask for a hearing at the water board on the water resources of the Ballona wetlands. And you heard Chief Anthony Morales at that hearing where we requested these issues be addressed. So far, we haven't gotten an answer. We haven't gotten any movement. But I think it's a very important point, and LA Audubon is committed to following through on this point. We would like alternative development based on the historic ecology, indigenous and citizen science observations, and what we know about the groundwater and surface water. We want consensus planning. So that's what LA Audubon is about. And I'm going to be quiet now. And I don't know how okay, I'm going to take this off. And the next speaker, let me close that one. The next speaker will be Shontel Johnson, who's going to speak about her personal experiences with the gas mitigation system at the Ballona wetlands. Shontel, are you have you unmuted yourself?
I have. Thank you so very much, Margot. I must admit, it was eerie to see our buildings in the background of some of your PowerPoint presentations. But thank you again. Good evening again, everyone. My name is Shontel Johnson. My family and I have been residents of the Fountain Park Apartments at Playa Vista for over 20 years. Moving here from another city, we thought it was a beautiful community until it appeared to be nothing more than actually an exterior beauty, because what lies beneath can literally kill you, because it almost killed us. There is a major methane gas problem here. I learned about this after a toxic methane gas leak in 2022 when I was nearly asphyxiated. After this, I was deeply distressed and wanted to learn more about this explosive gas. And the more I learned, the more burning questions it raised for me. Through research and referrals, I connected with member Patricia McPherson, who educated me on the history and the hazards of Playa Vista. And through her decades of engagement in environmental, human health, and safety issues. The Fountain Park Apartments is located on one of the largest methane gas seeps in the Western United States. Because of this, over 22 years ago, an extraordinary level of methane mitigation measures was required for the protection of the residents. But for the proper functioning of these methane mitigation measures, which were experimental at the time, LA City Council, Building and Safety, and Exploration Technologies, Inc., the former oil and gas experts, determined the site was too dangerous to develop. So dangerous that ETI recommended the safest approach was to leave this as open space or proceed with non-residential buildings only. This advice was disregarded, so here we are today. I believe it was in 2004, a methane task force was approved by LA City Council to fulfill the methane mitigation ordinance that was put in place. Since then, there has been no oversight, even though many attempts have been made to contact our elected leaders to address the deadly conditions that still exist. About 2007, 2008, former City Controller Laura Chick released a scathing audit of Playa Vista's methane systems, indicating there was no assurance the systems were working or even installed as required. Building and Safety and the fire department assured the City Council that they would do better, but things have only gotten worse. Methane gas alarms go off so regularly here, it has become the norm. Currently, Fountain Park lacks a proper functioning methane detection and mitigation system under the foundation of the building. Critical to this proper functioning is dewatering, because it keeps the gas pipes from clogging and becoming inoperable. Yet there appears to be no mandated monitoring to determine if dewatering is even occurring. And per 2 citations issued by the city, the system is defective, which I quote, constitutes a present, imminent, extreme, and immediate hazard or danger to life or limb and health or safety to the residents, rendering the entire property uninhabitable. Although assurances were made to protect public safety, Building and Safety is not performing the oversight required per the methane detection and monitoring program developed for the first phase of Playa Vista, which includes the Fountain Park Apartments. And worse, Building and Safety has offered no explanation for their lapse in oversight. I couldn't understand why city officials didn't act to protect the residents of Fountain Park and the community until I discovered the NBC award-winning investigation news series, Burning Questions, featuring Patricia McPherson. This riveting series highlighted years of methane gas controversies at the Playa Vista site before, during, and after construction. Dangerous methane gas, hydrogen sulfide, and BTEX compounds known as benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene, known to cause various blood cancers and other serious illnesses. Compounds and gases that reside in the soil and water beneath Fountain Park, inside the walls of our homes, and in the parking garage. The Burning Questions series further highlighted everything surrounding the development appeared to be purely political. Former Playa Vista president Steve Soboroff went from being the Playa Vista president to the former LAPD Board of Police Commissioners, while maintaining a financial interest in the development at the same time. Also relevant at that time was former Building and Safety General Manager and Deputy Mayor Raymond Chan, who is set for trial in 2024 for RICO conspiracy, bribery, and fraud. Now, while I don't know if Mr. Soboroff engaged with Mr. Chan or any other city officials on behalf of the Playa Vista development, the horrible optics of conflicts of interest look very bad and raises plausible reasons why city officials appear to have abdicated all responsibility to protect the health and safety of the residents and to provide the appropriate oversight for Fountain Park. This all continues to raise even more burning questions. As I conclude, I believe that I have always respected the environment, but my decades of experience involve a legal background in other areas of law. Now, I'm eager to learn about these harmful gases that not only pollute our environment, but also the long-term negative effects these hazardous compounds can have on our bodies and the planet. It's particularly concerning to me because my daughter is a cancer survivor, and I now suffer with respiratory problems as a result of being harmed by these gases. The Fountain Park community must be notified about these hazardous compounds that were concealed from my family and likely the other residents as well. I have never encountered anything like this before in my life. This experience, as well as the world emerging from a deadly pandemic, serve as cherished reminders of just how precious life is. Our environment is essential for everyone's life and must be protected from irresponsible human impacts. Therefore, I look forward to serving alongside my dear friend, Patricia, and other members of the Airport Marina Group, working together to make the world a better place for all. I thank you all for this opportunity to address the members, and a link for the Burning Questions series will be posted in the chat box for all those interested in reviewing it. Thank you again very much.
Thank you, Shontel. Okay. Back to unmute. Okay. I think Douglas is up next with a few comments he wants to make.
Let me share screen again. It's
Okay.
arduous. And then we'll have Doug speak.
Okay.
And as Shontel noted, they, in the chat box, you'll find a, I don't know why I can't get to the share screen. Okay, here we go. We're gonna share screen. Sorry, everyone. Right. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing my screen?
No,
Not yet.
Not yet.
Are you going to show us lovely Marina Del Rey?
Yes. Just hold on. I'll try to get to share screen yet again. There we go. Okay. Now can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you for that presentation, Shontel. It was moving, and your presentation, Margot. Well, here we are in lovely Marina Del Rey. They used to say live and play in Marina Del Rey when it was first built. My history goes back not as far as back as Chief Morales and the Tongva, but my grandfather and others formed the Ocean Fish Protective Association in 1949 when the fishery in the Santa Monica Bay died off, and they used to meet down in Venice, which is now considered the Marina Del Rey Peninsula. And so the environmental concerns about ecology decline have been on the radar for quite a long time now. I used to live next to Marina Del Rey, born and raised 1962, so I've watched the marina be developed, and I probably did 100 scuba dives in the Santa Monica Bay this last year, so I know this area intimately. So the burning question is, we kind of need a hero for our challenges in Marina Del Rey, especially when it comes to habitat decline. Years ago, there was a 303D violation, Clean Water Act, for copper exceeding the TMDL. That's a total maximum daily load. That was being enforced by the State Water Quality Control Board against the county. Studies were done, but nothing was done to correct the impairment. Mother's Beach, as you can see in the screen, often gets a level of service F, or a failure grade by Heal the Bay for water quality. So the children can't even swim there. I used to swim there when I was a child. I learned how to swim there. You used to be able to see sharks, crabs, lots of marine life in the marina, and now you don't see very much at all. You might see a few small fish. You might see rays swimming along, heading out to the bay, but the diversity has declined significantly. And on a bright note, John Tommy Rosas was helping me with a solution, and that solution, we were creating a working draft for Marina Del Rey Harbor sediment removal. And again, it may be kind of hard to understand, but the impairment was for copper, and that seemed to be more of a distraction because the main problem is, as you can see, all of those boats in the marina, you see the thousands and thousands of boats in the marina. Every one of those boats requires in-water hull cleaning. So a diver has to get in and scrub the bottom of the boat, and all of that organic material drops to the bottom of the marina. And that material becomes sediment. And if you can imagine a volcano erupting 24/7, that's pretty much what the bottom of the harbor has become. It's become a dead zone. And the only solution for that is to remove the sediment. A Sierra Club member told me that there's a fish and wildlife code that prohibits vacuuming and removing that sediment in the harbor. If we could overcome that, that's probably our largest obstacle. Again, John, Tommy, and I were designing a boat that could remove the sediment in the marina in an environmentally sensitive way, ecologically sensitive way. And we believe that that could be done through the county if we could find a hero to help us achieve that goal. When John Tommy passed, it kind of took the winds out of my sails because the person that was helping me achieve this goal, a solution, was no longer with us. A little bit more history. My father was a marine scientist, Dr. Raymond C. Fay, and he had fought a lot of the pollution battles in the Santa Monica Bay, the DDT, the Hyperion 301H waiver for sewage, secondary treatment in the Santa Monica Bay, and it was known as one of the most polluted bays in the world. And he had a hero, and that hero was State Assemblyman Tom Hayden, who came and helped him to create the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission. Heal the Bay was created during that battle, and the environmental movement was strong, but here we are again today with the harbor being polluted. And if you look at the Ballona wetlands and the plan to turn that into a fully titled, wouldn't it be better if we manage the Marina del Rey harbor for maximum ecological value for the marine life, for the aquatic life? It would kind of negate having to destroy the Ballona wetlands and break that promise. So if you could move to the next slide.
Okay.
Patricia asked, yes, please. Patricia asked me to cover TMDLs, and I thought I did that well with the Marina. And here is our hero, the Honorable County Supervisor Holly Mitchell. And what you see here is a motion for equity and inclusion. And if you would just go to the last sentence, it's actually the last half of the last sentence in the motion. After the comma, it says, continued development according to this piecemeal approach is not sustainable in Marina del Rey and would forestall a historic opportunity to make Marina del Rey accessible to the broadest and most diverse spectrum of visitors and residents since its creation. Well, folks, we're all Sierra Club members and we love wildlife. And I just happen to notice that this motion is geared towards humans. I don't see anything in this motion about wildlife and the marine life as visitors and residents of the harbor. And I think this is a golden opportunity to reach out to Supervisor Mitchell and ask for her support, maybe enlighten her on the history of Marina del Rey and this golden opportunity to, in part, make more progress to restore the ecology of the Santa Monica Bay than has been done since my father was fighting those battles starting in 1985. Again, I have 1,000 dives throughout the Pacific region as a scuba diver, scuba instructor, and I haven't seen any significant improvement in the bay's health since I started diving in the Santa Monica Bay in 1988. So this is something that I'd like you all to consider pursuing. Again, the most difficult thing for me is I don't have John Tommy to help me. And what I didn't realize when we were passing drafts back and forth on designing this boat and offloading the sediment and where it would go and how it would all work, I didn't realize that John Tommy wanted to be part of the team running the boat. I originally thought he just was helping us design it and that was going to be his role. And now that he's no longer here, it would be wonderful if we could complete this project, maybe do it under beaches and harbors as a pilot project, and see how it goes. I know the habitat would significantly improve within about 2 years of removing sediment. I think we can move up to 600 tons in 2 years' time after implementing the pilot project. And it would be wonderful if we could name the boat after John Tommy and in his honor. So, in that, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Doug. Now, I think Jackson Garland had a slide. If Joe, can you make him able to share screen?
I will pass that off to either you or to Morgan.
Yeah, welcome, Jackson. You're a co-host. You can share your screen as well.
Amazing. Okay. Hope that is up now. Oh wait, hold on.
Well, it was
That
really
does not
good
look
for a
right.
second.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who has this problem.
Here we are. Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Jackson Garland. So happy to see everyone in the same Zoom room. I want to give a special thank you to Morgan for being such a great organizer and dealing with everyone over email and really doing a wonderful job with this selection. So today, most of my experience kind of goes along with just researching the whole hydrogen issue that was proposed, just as much as so many people want it to be a godsend to have some sort of infinite resource that we could get our unlimited want of energy for Los Angeles. It's not exactly the best solution. I am analyzing hydrogen from the standpoint of the scattergood plant, which is just south of Playa del Rey and just above the city boundary of El Segundo. In this region, I was doing some digging and just looking at like the boundaries for Playa del Rey and El Segundo, LAX and part of the sand dunes, as well as this gray area, are drawn strategically outside of the city boundaries, just because it's, the Hyperion plant, which is deals with our waste, and of course this hydrogen, this power plant, which currently burns a mixture of biogas to create electricity. It's known to have an 830 kilowatt per hour capacity, which I have no idea what that looks like, but something per month in the average household in Los Angeles consumes about 800 kilowatt hours per month overall. And so over this summer, I got to participate in special hydrogen workshops that were sponsored by SoCalGas, and the treatment of the scattergood plant, they'd be treating it as a client, so they'd be selling this hydrogen to the plant. And so I really just want to get down with the definitions of hydrogen. So when we talk about green hydrogen, SoCalGas defines green hydrogen as hydrogen produced through using electrolysis, which is taking water and splitting the hydrogen from the oxygen. And then, so it would be that electrolysis power would be powered by solar and wind energy, and then there would be carbon capture measures as well. So that's why it would be like green, even though it's a significant thing that would be depleting our water resources. This is definitely a subject that deserves its like own forum. But this is really, I gave this presentation last semester in the spring during Earth Week, just to get people thinking in like a better framing of how we're looking at our kind of power and consumption issues. So in the next, so we have this map, and we have LAX airport just to the northeast of the Scattergood plant. Oh, and I forgot in the beginning, the first power turbine, which is the smaller one all the way on the left, was built in the 1970s, with the two other larger turbines built in a later date. So it's just an old plant, and the idea is to be getting this plants to be burning 100% hydrogen, even though the application of it is just not possible. So ideally, it would be still burning biogases, just with a hydrogen mix. And I'm going to talk about more problems with that later. But this map measures some of the air quality that Los Angeles deals with. This was measured in 2021. But it's still unclear what influence those biogas burning turbines has to do with the air quality. We already know that the higher the combustion rate of these turbines, the more NOx emissions are produced, which causes asthma in a lot of people. That's why there's so many cases of asthma of people living next to freeways and different areas. So yeah, it's an incredible strain on our water resources. And if you guys don't know about NOx emissions, I like to look at environmental issues from a public safety standpoint, because we're not going to, having like a human perspective, people having their lives getting ruined by like certain things is way more impactful, as we're not going to look at it from any other organism, just purely just based on that, if that makes sense. But really, the problem with this whole hydrogen project, and I don't mean to offend if you guys like the idea of hydrogen, and there may be, I really hope, I always pray that there's some sort of better application and some sort of solution to our kind of safety and consumption issues with energy. But the biggest issue is just the combustion rate that that we can't really monitor, or this whole hydrogen. It's really an experiment just with this plant, and so they haven't been able to measure NOx emissions and whether just what are going to be the general impacts. So, you know, no one owns it. It's not exactly in city territories, and it could be owned by someone else, but you know, it's still gonna have a huge impact on the air quality for the surrounding neighborhoods. Yeah, it's a very large topic, and that's kind of as brief as I can put it in. But I would be happy to answer any questions over email or anything. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
I think we never talk about decreasing our consumption. We only talk about different technologies to maintain our consumption. And I think really we need to shift that. Anyway, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jackson. I think I'm up next. Patricia McPherson, Airport Marina Group member and president of Grassroots Coalition. Thank you very much for that, Jackson. You hit on a lot of issues that have to do with SoCal gas that I'm very intimately familiar with the hydrogen sulfide issues and all the NOx, SOx issues and turning it to smog with sunshine. It's something we've been working with, and I look forward very much to talking with you about this and exploring this further. Thank you so much for bringing that to us. My part of this is going to be on the Santa Monica Groundwater Basin Sustainability Plan, some of which Dr. Griswold has already touched on, so I'll try and...
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. We've got it this time. Yeah. Shontel's, I got so absorbed in watching you, Shontel, and listening to you, I ended up calling Margot to say we're not seeing the slides, but she got them up. But I was riveted in listening to you. But anyway, let's get back to the groundwater sustainability plan that Margot first addressed. Just to let you know, again, in 2014, the California legislature recognized the need to protect groundwater resources and to plan for their long-term protection and sustainability. And so the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown. In the chat box, we also have a link to what is called a story map that I'm going to tell you about now, that a member of the public has provided us with, and we can share it with you. It's called a story map, and it pertains to our Santa Monica groundwater basin and its evaluation under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, including its component groundwater dependent ecosystem evaluation. John Davis created the story map as a university project in which his professor became interested actually and assisted John with it as a real life project. And the story map contains multiple links to the overseeing agency, the Department of Water Resources, and their recommended evaluation process for groundwater dependent ecosystems, which just so happens to be the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's groundwater dependent ecosystem evaluation process. As Margot said, no hydrology analysis of Ballona. So for our basin, this recommended process has not been done for our basin. The Santa Monica Groundwater Basin is comprised of 5 entities that have jurisdiction over it, namely the City of Santa Monica, which has a long history of use of the basin's aquifers for drinking water, and has been lead in confronting litigation with the oil and gas industry over the gasoline additive MTBE, which is now banned for its toxicity, which leaked into the basin's aquifers from various gas stations. Culver City, which prophylactively shut down its drinking water wells in our basin in order to help prevent spread of the MTBE to their southern basin area aquifer use. Joe Young actually worked for the Culver City company that was a part of that shutdown. And that Culver City does intend to start using the area again, now that they've gotten the contamination in a remediation mode. Beverly Hills has not used the area for drinking water purposes, but does share a more limited oversight use. And then there's the County of LA and the City of LA also share in responsibilities for the basin, which equals 5 entities with direct oversight. Well, what we've discovered is that many people and electeds and agency people are still unaware of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act and its ecosystem protective component, the groundwater dependent ecosystem requirements, which provide for protective investigation and management. And there you see an image of the basin that's put out by those 5 entities. And we've used it to map out some other things that you'll see in John's story map. Because Santa Monica is the primary user of the basin's aquifers for drinking water, it became the lead for informing the public. However, early on in their outreach, they include only a very limited stakeholder group, such as Heal the Bay and Friends of Ballona. And whereas the Sierra Club, Grassroots Coalition, Ballona Ecosystem Project, LA Audubon, Ballona Wetlands Land Trust, and numerous other key stakeholders were not apprised of outreach meetings. But a little over 2 years ago, we learned about the act and engaged the Department of Water Resources and the 5 entities. And in particular, we outreached with data and information our concerns to Santa Monica's Ms. Lizette Gold, who is also happens to be Mark Gold, the scientist for Heal the Bay's wife. But we reached out for protection of both drinking water and groundwater dependent ecosystem concerns for the lower portion of the basin and its aquifers and surface water. We, as independent public entities and our organizations, have since been attending the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act meetings and have responded to the Department of Water Resources as we found that numerous Sustainable Groundwater Management Agency issues and groundwater dependent ecosystem issues were not addressed or sufficiently covered. And as Margot showed you before, with these organizations, where's my camera? That one. We have a lot of large organizations that share our concerns. The Nature Conservancy, Audubon, California, the Union of Concerned Scientists, Clean Water Action, Clean Water Fund, and Local Government Commission. And we have been collaborating with the Nature Conservancy. We share their findings, which quickly are the beneficial uses and users are not sufficiently considered in the plan that has now been sent to DWR. Public trust resources are not sufficiently incorporated. Public trust resources are not sufficiently considered. Impacts of minimum thresholds, measurable objectives, and undesirable results on beneficial uses and users are not sufficiently analyzed. Climate change is not sufficiently considered, and data gaps are not sufficiently identified, and the groundwater sustainability plan does not have a plan to eliminate them. And lastly, projects and management actions do not sufficiently consider potential impacts or benefits to beneficial uses and users. And much of the lack of this address, we believe, is due to their focus on their own drinking water supplies. And as the Department of Water Resources has noted, there are numerous basins that have not addressed properly their ecosystem needs. And for our part, the potential drinking water classification by the Water Board of the lower portion of the basin's aquifers, which is the Ballona and Bellflower, Aquitard, and aquifers, that according to DWR, the Department of Water Resources, they act as one aquifer, with the acknowledged drinking water aquifer, the Silverado, underlying the Ballona and Bellflower. We've also since been outreaching to the public, and we now have numerous democratic clubs, homeowner groups, resident associations that have similarly sent letters to the 5 entities citing the insufficient evaluations and are calling specifically for a prudent groundwater dependent ecosystem evaluation performed per the Department of Water Resources recommended Department of Fish and Wildlife protocol. Several months ago, during a Sustainable Groundwater Management Act meeting that is recorded, we have that also for you as a YouTube. The 5 authorities agreed to agendize for October a discussion of our issues. And we had previously been meeting with the county, Ms. Gina Natoli, and at the last meeting, she put forward a motion which was approved to review these issues during the October meeting. We need to have an update check to determine if the meeting will occur on what we think is 18th. I believe, Margot, you had sent me, but meanwhile, we are preparing for it, and we are, discussing with the Nature Conservancy and others to be able to address all these issues. So there is a lot going on. This act is an enormous tool. The agencies are required to abide by it. It is an issue we raised at the last Water Board meeting, and they agreed they need to abide by this. So we would like to take advantage of this. And that's all I've got to say for now. And I think we have, a link for this that includes their full letter in the story map that John created. Thanks.
Okay, do we have any questions? Doesn't help.
Yes, Joe. For Patricia, it's more of a comment on the theme of equity and inclusion and projected sea level rise. Those coastal aquifers also need to be managed for wildlife.
Yes.
It's essential for the nearshore species to, in their reproductive cycle, to have that fresh water leaching into the ocean. So we need a positive charge of fresh water on the coastal aquifers, and that hasn't been addressed. Or I've commented on it with local coastal plan updates and to various organizations, but it doesn't seem to be discussed nearly as much as it should. So thank you for doing this, and hopefully we'll make some progress for the wildlife.
Yeah, well, most people are, an awful lot of people are unaware of this. And what we learned is that even the entities of, let's call it SGMA, so I don't have to say Sustainable Groundwater Management Act over and over, they have not been communicating. So we are the connector of the dots here. And so the issue you raised, Douglas, is absolutely right on. The water affects the habitat. The habitat is the sustenance for the wildlife, all of which SGMA is all about, and GDE protection, which includes the issues that you just addressed.
And I think it all zeroes in our concerns for the Ballona wetlands. It's not being addressed by the very entity of California Department of Fish and Wildlife that has a protocol for everyone else, apparently, but not for themselves.
Well, and we're working to see that their own rules and regulations are enforced, because they have violated their own regulations, such as they have never done a land management plan, which would have required hydrology evaluation throughout the area. CDFW also happens to be, it claims to be a board member of PLAYA VISTA's Ballona Wetlands Conservancy, which is, I feel, a total conflict of interest, because they are directly involved, as they were with the illegal drains out there, draining away all of this water, wasting it out to the ocean. And CDFW has its own department, actually, for groundwater dependent ecosystems and fulfilling SGMA, and yet they're not utilizing it here, and we want them to utilize it. This is a regional issue. This involves all of the basin, because as the city of Santa Monica is concerned about its own drinking water wells, and I applaud them for that, but that does not cover the rest of us that share this basin. And that's why we have been outreaching and connecting the dots with Culver City and other homeowner groups and democratic clubs that do very much care about the wildlife of the area, and the potential drinking water and the drinking water issues that we should not be even under Porter Cologne, our state law that says you're not allowed to even put in like contamination. So what would CDFW's plan for digging out Ballona, how would that affect the groundwater, including the Silverado? They don't know. They've done no evaluation. And that's what we're asking for as it affects the entire area, including Playa Vista, north of the channel, you know, the entire basin.
And we know that there's been no study on saltwater intrusion, because the
Right.
model saltwater intrusion, there are no monitoring wells for them to gather the data necessary. So it's a huge data gap.
Right.
We might add buried in the appendix of the groundwater sustainability plan, as usual. If you look in the appendices, you find a lot of stuff. Anyway,
Christina or Marcia has a question. Christina, I think, was up first. I see her hand up. If you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, this is Christina. This is my first meeting, and thank you, Patricia, for including and inviting me. I just became a member, paid my dues, and I just want to tell everybody here, attendees and all the co-hosts, that I am absolutely impressed with this meeting, with the presentation, the quality, the facts that you're presenting. And Miss Johnson, your story, how well written, and how you presented, your personal experience. I absolutely enjoy this meeting, and I can tell how organized you all are, and how compassionate and intelligent and technically savvy. You've got this meeting going great. And I look forward to the next meeting. Thank you for including.
Thank you so very much, Christina. I just wanted to let you know this is my first meeting as well. So thank you for that.
You did absolutely great. I learned so much from you and from all the presenters. Thank you.
Hi. May I speak?
Yes, please. Anybody can unmute
Okay,
themselves.
all right, even if I'm a would-be host. Yeah, Jackson, it is really great to see someone like you doesn't have hair like mine, white and gray. It's good. Thank you very much for being here. I marveled at your slide about where your different colorations of energy creation is what I would call that. And I wonder, how do you feel about usage of green energy, either solar or wind, or maybe tidal or whatever, to create the energy to purify water? In other words, operate a desalination plant based on energy derived from green energy sources. How do you feel about that?
I mean, ultimately, I think it's like a great idea, solar and wind power. A lot of cases, like when you look closer at solar wind power, they're always, just like, covering it. It still leads to habitat loss in a lot of places. So there's always just kind of, plus and minuses about it. When you talk about water desalination, are you talking about like converting ocean water into fresh water, or
at least fresher water than we have now?
yeah. I mean, and then there's like a lot of, I feel like it's like a total like rabbit hole. You can just keep going down. Like there's a lot of different factors.
But I noticed that you start with the green line on the top of your slide. Well, what do you do with that energy when you've created the energy from green sources or green development? That's I'm just, if you're going to create it that way, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, well, it was purposeful just because greenwashing is such a big issue, just with a lot of our just concepts of things. So green hydrogen, it's the process of electrolysis. So it's splitting, water molecules just from hydrogen and oxygen, as simply as I could put it. But that whole idea is, using solar and wind energy that we could be supplying, and like the whole logic behind it, and we'll ask kind of like the SoCal Gas Board, at least during these meetings, because it was just for community-based organizations, even though there's so many people that didn't include. I was lucky enough to be included, but they just kind of get around the question. It's just the definitions of things are just so important, and just because something is someone saying it's green, it's really not. And I love to go back with blue hydrogen. It's how they produce blue hydrogen is still using fossil fuels to create that electrolysis process to create hydrogen. So it's like a whole thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody have anything else?
I think Marcia has her hand up.
Great, Marcia, go for it.
Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned the saltwater intrusion issue, and I think maybe it might be a good idea to look into the reports that the USGS has, because I understand they have done some analysis on that. And the water districts like the West Basin Water District, they have a huge saltwater wedge of water coming in there that they have to hold back, and we're not that far from there. In fact, at one time the LA River flowed to Redondo Beach, which is why there's a big submarine canyon there. So I mean, it used to go back and forth. So anyway, my point is, I think there is some information out there. Maybe the entity overseeing this process doesn't have it, but I also think that you can look to the detention basin, the Playa Vista detention basin, and look at all of the plants that they planted that were supposed to be totally fresh water. And you've got all kinds of salt marsh plants growing up in the basin. So there's some kind of salty something under there.
Well, that's probably deals is
Right.
keeping that out. It's just that in the Santa Monica subbasin, they never had a monitoring well. They don't have monitoring wells at Ballona, Marina del Rey, or anywhere near the coast to be able to model, to complete their study. So while there may be information, it's not the type of information they need to complete that modeling. No, I agree with you. There's
I wonder too if the water board might have something, because Ellen Stern Harris told me that ages ago when she had been on the water board, you know, that they were dealing with saltwater intrusion. So I don't know if somebody there might have some old records or what, but
we've talked to the water board staff.
We are talking with water board staff on this, and certainly the board members, so they're well aware of us talking about this. But I think it's great that you raised even the West Basin, because we're well aware of the Department of Fish and Wildlife with Director Bonin making statements that the West Basin folks stated that the CDFW plan would create no problems. And there was no such statement made by the West Basin people. And we have been going also to their meetings and providing information, and they actually pulled back from their approval of CDFW in a broad-based way to say that we want to take a look and see, because there isn't data as to what would occur should there be saltwater intrusion because of digging down. And we do know from the Poland report, who was the grandfather of all hydrology of the basin, that he warned against further removal of soils anywhere throughout the area because of the saltwater intrusion, even that occurred in the creation of the marina, and that the rest of the clay layers out there should be protected to protect those underlying freshwater aquifers. So we have been working with the West Basin people and have been at numerous meetings. Margot and I did a presentation we can share with you also, and we continue to. So thank you for that, and thank you for thinking about that. And we are looking into that, and we'll look into anything you can think of that we should look into.
that's great. I just want to say I would be careful about suggesting that it could be a drinking water basin. Again, I just don't think, given the history, given the plants I see growing up, I wouldn't want I wouldn't want to use it for drinking water. So
well, it is classified by the water board as
that was years ago, decades ago.
It's still classified as potential drinking water and drinking water, and the Silverado does act as one, and it does communicate throughout that edge. So that's all we're saying, is this does need evaluation, it does need review, it does need scrutiny, which has not occurred.
So just to follow up on that point, because this is a really important issue, whom would you recommend if we were to lobby a particular organization on the monitoring side? Is that West Basin municipal water district, or where would you suggest putting our energy?
Well, I know that these guys are interested in all of this. So we are going to collaborate with them and the Union of Concerned Scientists and talk to them about what they know, as well as WATERBOARD staff that have their own scientists. And it is under their purview under the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. So we have resources available. We just need to connect the dots, as we've been working to do, and to utilize it.
And there is money available to groundwater sustainable agencies, such as the Santa Monica Subbasin. They just have to apply for a grant to put in monitoring wells near Marina del Rey and Ballona.
Which actually City of Santa Monica has done already, applied for grants, mostly for their own purposes, but they have acknowledged the data gap of needing a monitoring well close to the coast in the Marina area. And that is what they have put in a grant application for, which they then take to the City of Santa Monica for the City Council to approve that, which they did. And then they move on to the next. So the Department of Water Resources has monies available to do various investigations. So as Margot just said, it's a matter of tapping into it. And but it's available. And the City of Santa Monica has tapped into it for, you know, fixing even their own drinking water wells. So, you know, we in the rest of the basin, you know, want to be in on this more.
And I think if nothing else, connecting what's happening with the surface water and groundwater at Ballona is very important right now. I mean, it's a different time than even 15, 20 years ago in terms of the resource of fresh water.
Yeah.
And putting it in the ground is the best way right now. We would keep saltwater intrusion at bay, etc. If not, use it down the line for drinking water.
Yeah, and as Margot said, though there are water diversion areas into the channel and into the Marina area that don't have permits from the Water Board. And so we've raised those issues with the Water Board, and they need to be addressed, just as Grassroots Coalition raised the issue in litigation with PLAYA VISTA. We litigated against the Department of Fish and Wildlife and PLAYA VISTA, and we prevailed with regard to those illegal, unpermitted drains. So it's, you know, more of the same.
That's not we, the Sierra Club, I should note.
No, I said Grassroots Coalition, yes.
I want to make sure that's clear.
Anyway.
Actually, well, we can get into all of that. The Sierra Club has supported various litigation with Grassroots, but that was independent totally, yes.
Anybody else?
I just want to say thank you all so very much for the very warm welcome. I want to definitely acknowledge the Director Morgan and to my dear friend Patricia, who actually let me know about this wonderful group. I have so much to learn. This is completely a new area to me that I never expected, but for the experiences, unfortunate experiences that I had to encounter, but it is a wonderful opportunity to continue to learn more and more about this area. So I do look forward to being able to share more with you as I learn more and being in contact with our various elected leaders. So I just wanted to say thank you all so very much again for the warm welcome. I really appreciate it.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us. Okay. Anybody else? Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. Please, and also remind you to vote in the upcoming Sierra Club election, both at the chapter level and at the regional group level. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Look forward to the next meeting. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Night, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Night.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
Good night.
Great.
Hey, bring your friends next time. Young people.